Evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening. What I'd like to say is, obviously, we can't see who's watching us. So if you'd like to just say hi or like this post, please like and share. So we get out to the world. And this evening, I'd like to introduce you to Samara Stephens. Samara is actually my daughter, and going to be talking to us this evening about her diagnosis and living with bipolar. So good evening, Samara.
Hello.
Maybe first of all, would you like to explain to our viewers what bipolar is?
Yeah, that's fine. So bipolar is defined as a mood disorder. So there's different types of bipolar. There's bipolar 1, which is where people have longer periods of mania, and this can trigger into kind of like psychosis and things like that. So the mania lasts longer. People can be hospitalized with this type of bipolar. There's bipolar type 2, which is what I have. So bipolar type 2 is
would you like to explain?
Mainly where you have longer periods of depression and then periods of hypomania. So the hypomania tends to last kind of 4 to 5 days, and the depressive periods can kind of be anywhere from a couple of days to weeks or months. Usually to get diagnosed with bipolar type 2, you have to have had some period of hypomania and at least a depressive period that lasts 2 weeks or more.
Okay. So evening, Anne.
So bipolar is a mood disorder. So this can be obviously periods of being quite high, periods of being quite low. Is made up of, oh, that's my cat. So yeah, it's quite a difficult thing to live with, in the sense that I also rapid cycle. So that means I can be kind of hypomanic and depressed at the same time simultaneously. So yeah, it can vary. I sleep quite hyperactive and then wake up quite low, and vice versa, really.
So saying you said like sort of you can be either hypomania or depressed at the same time. How does that work? Because hypomania, you're all excitable.
Yeah, so I have like bursts of energy, and then I'm like really lethargic and tired and down, and my mood's really low all of a sudden, and then it can go back up, and then it can go back down, and then it can go back up, and it can go back down. And that can kind of happen quite quickly throughout the day. I'm not really sure how it works when it happens at the same time. But most of the time when that's happening quite quickly throughout the day, I guess it's almost like when you feel like you've got a lot of energy, but you can't be bothered to do anything.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So you can kind of feel yourself being like, oh, I really need to get this done. But you're just like, no, I can't be bothered to do that. But rather than that just being a decision that you're making to not do that when you think that you should do it, it's like my brain is like, you need to do it, but you don't do it.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, it's really, really difficult to describe, because a lot of the time I think at times I can notice it, but it's the people around me that notice it more.
Right. Okay.
But whether that's because I've got so used to that being a thing, I don't recognize it as much as other people around me do.
I suppose in some ways as well, that like sort of looking at the depression side of it, sometimes we don't always recognize when we are depressed and low. And it's kind of
Yeah.
learning
So
to recognize that within ourselves, is it?
yeah, so it can just be like like maybe I feel like I've got no energy, or I just feel really fatigued. Like no matter how much coffee I drink, it makes no difference.
Yeah.
So it's like that. It's not necessarily that I'm depressed at that time, but it's more like my mood will drop, and then I'll just be really tired and lethargic, and I can't be bothered to do anything, and I become really irritable, and then I'm snappy with people, and then I don't want to talk to people because I can feel myself being snappy, but I can't control that because of everything that's going on in my head and inside of me. I can't control that, and it makes me really irritable.
Okay, we got super proud of you always, my beauty. So it's just a Facebook user. If you want to make a comment, if you're not given StreamYard your permission to use your name, if you could just add your name to the end of your comment, and then it just comes up with Facebook user. So did you say that it was a chemical imbalance, the bipolar?
Yeah, so it's a chemical imbalance. Wow, I guess it's like anything, isn't it? So if you've got depression, it's because you've got a chemical imbalance in your brain. And something's happened that's triggered that. Like ultimately, like life events will trigger it. But the reason that obviously people take medications and antidepressants and antipsychotics and anti-anxieties is to support in making up what you're lacking.
Right.
So bipolar is a chemical imbalance in your brain. So it's not something that you just get over with a bit of talking therapy, or you have a medication that kind of takes it away, or like takes the edge off of it. It's always there. Like I take medication, but that doesn't get rid of the symptoms that I have. I still have those symptoms. They're just not as, I guess they're not as dominant as they are when I don't have the medication.
Okay.
So it's not something that you can just have a bit of CBT and talking therapy and then wake up in 6 months' time and you're cured. Like it's lifelong. It's not
Yeah.
not something you just get over.
Those kind of things, though, haven't you?
Huh?
You have tried those kind of things, though, you talking therapies and.
Yeah, I have. I didn't find them overly helpful, really, but more in the sense that having CBT, I think didn't really help, because you would have an hour session and then at the end of the hour they would say, okay, your hour's done, we'll see you next week, and they potentially flagged up all of this stuff that actually you need to deal with now, not in a week's time.
Yeah. Okay. So how long have you had your diagnosis for?
3 years in June this year.
That's gone quite quick, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what can you tell that our listeners, like, sort of what led up to your diagnosis?
Probably about 10 to 12 years of being absolutely uncontrollable.
In what way?
I guess, like, I didn't.
Only if you're happy to share, you know.
Yeah. Like, obviously, I didn't know what was going on, so it was like anxiety, depression, all of that kind of stuff that was originally diagnosed. And I think, my moods were very interchangeable quite quickly. And it wasn't really until I started working with people who had bipolar, and I felt not similar in the sense that I was potentially that unwell, but in the sense that kind of traits that they had, I recognized in myself.
Okay.
And then I think I looked into it a bit, and I think what kind of maybe triggered it more was I got put on to an anti-anxiety, and one of the side effects of the anti-anxiety was mania.
Oh.
And I think for about 5 days I maybe had 2 or 3 hours sleep a night, but still got up in the morning and still managed to go to work for 14 hours and still function like I slept for that amount of time. So then I think that was like the November. So I went to my GP in the January and kind of said, I think I've got bipolar, and explained why. So I was originally diagnosed with cyclothymia. So that's where you have like periods of symptoms of hypomania and symptoms of depression. And I think at that point I'd kind of been going back to my GP on and off for about 3 years. And at that point, when he diagnosed me with that, he said, like, usually it takes about 2 years to diagnose that condition. But because I'd been going back to him for about 3 years, and with all of the varying symptoms, and then when I went and said that, that's where it kind of all started, really. So that was in the January. And then I had an assessment with the community mental health team, and then they referred me to a psychiatrist, and then she diagnosed me in the June.
And so that would have been June 3 years ago, obviously. So
yeah.
how kind of running up to that, how bad did your symptoms get?
I don't think they were that bad when I was diagnosed, but then I'd been like that for a good probably 5 or 6 years as I was when I got diagnosed.
Okay.
So I don't think the symptoms really, it's difficult because I've lived it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to kind of put well, they definitely started in 2016 in January sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that had kind of been where I'd been at for probably 5 or 6 years. So I don't think in the run up to getting diagnosed, they got any worse.
Yeah.
I think it was probably after I got diagnosed that they got worse.
In what way?
I think originally when I got diagnosed, I was really happy because I had some answers as to how I had been for so long. And obviously I could look at ways I could help myself and make things better. And then after a month or two, I think the reality hit me that it was a lifelong condition and I was never going to get rid of it. So although I had the answers that I wanted and I had the answers that I kind of knew already, I don't think I prepared myself to be diagnosed with the condition, but I don't think I'd prepared myself that actually this is forever.
Yeah.
And it's not going to go away. It's not something like, it's treatable, but it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it was more the realization that it was like, shit, this is my life. I was 26 when I got diagnosed. So yeah, I think it was just the reality that, am I going to be like this forever? Is my life always going to be this up and down?
Yeah.
And I think that was when things got worse, because at that point I was like, I can't manage this condition for the next 60 years because it was so exhausting already.
Yeah. So what did you do then though? What happened?
Went off the rails for about 6 months.
So when you say went off the rails, what kind of things, if you're happy to share?
Yeah, so well, it was mainly just drinking and just going out all the time, and I think the majority of that was just trying to numb everything that was going on, and trying to numb the fact that this is forever, and you know, I need to learn to deal with it, and how am I going to deal with it, and how am I going to learn to deal with it. And then rather than figuring that out, drinking made me feel better. The more I drank, the better I felt, and then it just spiraled until it was an everyday thing that I would do as soon as I got home from work, whether that be 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But just blocked it out. So
then, like, sort of, obviously we know like an alcohol is a depressant anyway. Did the alcohol have an effect on the depressive side of you?
well, yeah, I guess so, which is then probably what pushed the drinking more, because then when I wasn't drinking, I felt quite low and made my anxiety worse, like the next day. But then when I'd been drinking, it made me feel happier. So it was like a catch-22, really.
Yeah. So obviously, how bad did it actually get then?
So I was drinking every day, to up to a couple of bottles of wine a day, and then up until the beginning of November, when I guess all of the depression and everything was kind of quite strong at that point. And I had decided that I'd had enough, and that I was too I guess I'd convinced myself that I was too much of a burden for everybody else. My drinking was really bad. I was really depressed. I didn't want to be like this forever. Convinced myself that people wouldn't want to be around me forever if this is how I was and this is what my moods were like. So I made the decision that I was going to end my own life at the beginning of November, because I thought that was my only option, and I thought that was my only way out, and I thought that everybody else would be better off if I wasn't here dragging everybody down, being a burden, being miserable. And that was how bad it got.
So you actually tried to end your life?
Yeah, so I think I was about 4, maybe 5 bottles of wine in at the time. And I drove myself to somewhere that I knew would have quite a lot of potential for me to jump and that to be done and over. So I did that. I drove there. And then as I was getting out of my car,
because this was very late at night though, wasn't it?
This was about 1 o'clock in the morning. Between midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that, around that time. And as I got out of my car, 4 people walked past my car, and they were going to the same place that I was going to. So they ruined all my plans, and then I panicked and I didn't know what to do. So I rang 111, and then I ended up in A&E by about 2 o'clock in the morning.
So I know you said, I know you've done your own little video on your own group page. And you said in that video that those 4 people that night saved your life.
Well, yeah, they did, because if they hadn't have turned up, then I probably would have gone through with it. Whether it would have ended my life or just seriously hurt me and put me in a worse position, who knows? But if they hadn't have turned up when they did, then yeah, by all means, I would have followed through with what I had planned. So they did save my life without even knowing.
Yeah. So then when you got to the hospital, how were you treated?
I basically had to sit in the A&E department with all of these other people who were waiting for, to go into A&E because they'd hurt themselves or whatever. So I had to sit in that waiting room. Times I've got no idea, but probably until about 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. And they basically wouldn't let me leave until I'd seen the psychiatrist in the morning. But I was just left to sit in A&E with loads of other people, which was probably the worst thing because I didn't want to be around anybody.
Yeah.
But they were good. They were fine. They were supportive. Like, they gave me what I needed.
Yeah. So was that the kickstart into getting the community mental health team on board, or was that before?
No, so I was referred to the community mental health team when I got diagnosed in June.
Because you had to wait, didn't you?
2 years, yeah.
2 years. And for somebody who's for anybody that's suffering with mental health problems, that is a long wait to get the support that you desperately need.
Yeah.
So how did you manage in that 2 years then, and like sort of coming off of the back of your suicide attempt?
It was difficult. I didn't speak, so I spoke to the psychiatrist that morning, and then I didn't speak to anybody again for 6 weeks. So not until the December. And then they checked in again in the January. And then I got kind of 6 weekly calls from, I guess she was like some receptionist, just making sure I was okay. Asked if I was okay, asked if I had relevant numbers if I needed them.
Yeah.
And that was it, really. Didn't have any input then from the January 2019 with a psychiatrist until the end of May 2020. So 18 months nearly with no real contact from anybody.
And how did that make you feel? Did it make you feel like you were being abandoned?
No, because I knew that they were obviously really snowed under. I didn't expect it to take 2 years. But I had obviously the understanding that it was going to be quite a wait. And I guess I knew that they were on the end of the phone if I thought I needed them.
Right.
So I had numbers for the community mental health team, crisis team, things like that. So they were on the phone if I needed them.
Yeah.
How quick that would have been, it probably would have been put through to someone and then someone else and then someone else and then, but there wasn't really a lot I could do. So I either had a choice to just suck it up, probably get worse so somebody would see me quicker, or just get on with my life and learn to manage and learn my own coping skills. Yeah, because I didn't have a choice.
But I think that's part of your character as well, though, because a lot of people would have gone the opposite way.
I know, and I think having gone the opposite way and being in that situation in the November, it was either sort my shit out and get on with it, or feel like that until someone's got some time to see me. And if I'd felt like that for 2 years before I finally saw somebody, that probably wouldn't have been my first attempt, and it probably wouldn't have been my last.
Yeah. But
I got myself as low as I could go, so the only way I could go was up.
Yeah. And you have done a lot, I would say, on your own. Because I know you like sort of did a lot with Mind.
Yeah, so I've been in contact with them, done some bits with them, run a half marathon with no training, which killed me. Wouldn't advise that to anybody. Don't do it. It's stupid. So yeah, raise some money for them. There's like Bipolar UK, so they do like at the moment they do like group Zooms so for people who've got bipolar diagnoses can join these group Zoom sessions, and other people with bipolar across the country talk about their experiences and their diagnosis and how it affects them. So it's like support groups.
Yeah.
So they're really helpful.
And I should imagine as well, because like sort of, I would imagine like sort of it's quite an isolatory condition.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Like actually talking to somebody else that has the condition kind of knows what you're going through.
Yeah, because I think so bipolar isn't portrayed very well in the media.
Right.
You know, you hear it that someone went off and did a fucking school shooting massacre because they've got bipolar, or you know, like they're just not, it's just not portrayed in the media well at all. I just watched this series on Netflix called The Sicily Hotel or something in LA, and it was all about this girl who she got murdered essentially, but before they come to the conclusion that she got murdered, it was she's got bipolar, she was suicidal, she put herself in the water tank apparently, shut the lid on herself, and then swam around there until she drowned. But before they come to the conclusion that she'd been murdered, they pretty much said that she committed suicide in this water tank.
Right.
Like, and that's just another thing. So all of these people are going to be watching it, and that's another thing that portrays people with bipolar in a bad light.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not the case. Like, yes, some people have these symptoms and they do get psychosis and things like that, but that doesn't make them bad people.
No.
Like, we are humans, we have feelings, we have emotions like everybody else, but they're just a lot stronger and they're a lot more intense, and sometimes we can't control it. But if we could control those symptoms, then we would, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
So I think it's just portrayed really badly, which then, you know, you tell people that you've got bipolar and it's like, oh, she's a killer.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So how have people reacted to you then?
Majority really well. Sometimes I am a bit skeptical telling people when I first tell people, but I think that's because I've had a bad experience in the past when I first got diagnosed, and I thought I would be honest about it when I like at work so that people could understand a little bit more, and then that completely got thrown back in my face.
Right.
So it does make me anxious telling people, but I'm kind of in the mind frame that you either accept that as part of who I am or you don't accept it at all. Like, you know, that it's not who I am, it is a part of who I am. I can't do anything about it, I can't change it, I can't make it go away.
No.
You know, my response is, do you really think that I want to live with this mental health condition that dominates my life the majority of the time? Because the answer is fucking no, never in a million years. But I have to learn to live with it. If other people don't want to accept the fact or learn to live with the fact that that's the diagnosis that I've got, then they don't have to be a part of my life. It makes no odds.
So like sort of, I mean, I know like sort of since your diagnosis to now, you've changed jobs, you're in a new job now.
Yeah.
So how I mean, it's quite a stressful job.
I got to know people and I got to know the staff before I told them.
Right.
Because then there isn't a judgment on it, because they already know who I am. They already know what I'm like. They've already got the little snippets of when to maybe not approach me because of my facial expression or whatever. And then I'm honest. I don't, it's not like I walk into a job and shake the manager's hand and say, "Hi, my name's Samara. I've got bipolar. This is going to be really fun." Because no, like I was honest when I got the job. I was honest about it. Like it had to go through to occupational health. That's not an issue. I was honest about it so they could make adjustments for work. But I wasn't honest with the entire
team
because I didn't need to be at that point. Because if that's what I come in with, that's what you get judged on.
Yeah.
And I got judged on that. I'd worked with people for probably 3 years, came out and said I had a diagnosis, and then got discriminated for. People that I knew for quite a long time.
Right.
So yes, I got diagnosed, but I'd already been acting like an absolute lunatic for 4 years. So actually me getting diagnosed makes no odds whatsoever, because you've known me as that person.
Yeah.
I have a reason for it. It's not an excuse, but I have more of a reason for why my moods have been so interchangeable. I've been really hyperactive and running around and not wanting to sit down for too long. But to then tell people about it because you think it's better to be honest and then discriminate against you for it makes it difficult to want to tell people.
Yeah.
However, I also know that I need to be honest with people because of how my moods can be so interchangeable and how irritable I am sometimes, because it might come across one day that I'm really, really nice and kind, and then the next day I'm an absolute bitch, but that's not because it's anything against that person. It's just because I can't control everything.
Right.
Can't control every single mood. I can't always keep a lid on it.
Yeah.
It's like
kind of hard. I suppose it's trying to like sort of keep a jack in a box down, isn't it? You can't, you're forever like sort of having to watch what you say or watch how you're behaving or to try and recognize how you're behaving around people. And that must be really tiring.
Yeah, because I am conscious of it. So I am conscious of my moods, and I am aware of when they're changing.
But you weren't in the beginning, were you?
No,
because I can remember like sort of you saying in one of your jobs, like sort of they were quite supportive of you because they kind of would let you know in a subtle way or would ask you whether you were feeling all right because they
I got to know people quite well. I did have one person ask me one day if I could wear red when I'm in a bad mood and green when I'm happy, just so they know to stay away from me or talk to me. So I said, no, you'll fucking find out your own way, won't you?
Yeah. They were quite supportive in that way of helping you to recognise what was going on within your own body.
Yeah, I guess so, because they would say, "You're not okay today, are you?" And then that would make me go, "Oh, no, actually, I'm not."
Yeah.
But then that was the job that I'd been in for 6 years, and then I got diagnosed 2 years, a year before I left.
Yeah.
So, I knew them well. They were the people that I I told. That was the job I was in that I told. And obviously some people were really supportive, and then you had the other kind of 2 or 3 that just made comments about it. And
yeah. And what I love about you, and I was doing a questionnaire a few weeks ago. I was doing a video for a lady who's doing a project, and she'd sent me some questions. And the first question was, who is your inspiration? And you immediately came to the front of my mind. You are my inspiration, because even though you've got this diagnosis and you've suffered many years prior to that with depression, and I know we've not always got on,
well,
like
what
but that's families for you though, isn't it? But for me, looking at you, you have never, what I would say, allowed your diagnosis to define who you are. Okay. You're on your 3rd year of doing a university degree.
I mean,
Holding down a full-time job.
I am in my 3rd year, but I've been there for 6. Let's not dull this down.
No, but you're persevering with it. You know where you want to go in life. You have a goal. And even though you had to, I don't know, did you defer a year?
Yeah, because I got diagnosed in
June
and then failed my 3rd year in the August.
Yeah. So you've made this plan that you really want to get your last year of your degree done, but sensibly, you're not pushing and putting extra pressure on yourself to achieve that. So you're doing it over a 2-year period.
Yeah.
Rather than doing it in the one. So you your limitations, and you know that you can't put that extra pressure on yourself to get something done, but you're not allowing that. You're not, I don't see you as a victim. That's what I'm trying to say. You're not, you've got this, and like I said earlier on, a lot of people wouldn't have just had that thought process of, I got to just get on with my life and learn to help myself, and as much as I can on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people would have been that victim.
But I think I've also grown up around Oliver, who has multiple things going on in his life every single day.
Oliver,
he gets up and he does it. So, he's been my inspiration for the last, what would he have been when I got diagnosed? 21 this year?
He's 22 this year. For anybody who doesn't know, Oliver is Samara's younger brother, my youngest son, who was born with asymmetric diaplegic cerebral palsy, but he's also autistic. So, and he has various other issues that have come apparent as he's grown up. So, yeah.
But he did it. He did it for 19 years, 17 years, whatever it was when I got diagnosed. He did it. He got up. He fought every day, even though he didn't want to. He's been my inspiration. He can do it. His is worse than mine. Not that it's a comparison. I'm not comparing. I don't think it's something like that. It's not like, your fucking deal is worse than mine. But, he does it, and he does it every day, and he barely complains about it. And
then it's kind of slightly different for Oliver because he was born with it. So he's lived with it all his life. Whereas yours...
Yeah, no, I get that.
I would say probably you're like when would you say like your depression side of things started?
Probably when I was about 13.
So that's because I kind of like I was saying to you the other day, I always question whether I had anything to do with Oliver being the way that he is. but I also question myself whether I was your trigger, because at that time we weren't getting on, and
but
I
I
sent
think
you to live with Dad because I couldn't deal with you and deal with Oliver at the same time.
no, and like we said the other day, maybe there were 1,000 contributing factors from before that happened. Maybe there were 1,000 contributing factors after that happened. But ultimately, it's that chemical imbalance, isn't it? And yes, things may trigger it that make it come out, but it's going to come out eventually one way or another.
Yeah. Because I also remember around the time of you being diagnosed as well, you asked whether anybody else in the family had.
Yeah, because obviously it being genetic, or can be.
Which, see, I didn't realise that. And I know, like,
So
I suffered with mental health.
Yeah. So it
And
can link to like your mum or your dad having it, but usually it tends to be not immediate. So it would be somebody else, like an auntie or an uncle or something like that.
my Auntie Linda, my sister.
Yeah. So when I was diagnosed, I didn't realise Auntie Linda had it.
Well, I didn't, because I mean, she was
why I asked.
With manic depression, and it was you who said, well, actually, that's what they call bipolar now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that, which is why I asked the question of whether anybody else had it, or was I just the unlucky one along the chain that
decided.
got it.
Yeah.
Sucked it up for everybody else.
So what kind of things, I know, like, you were really kind of, you put your best foot forward to try, and you knew that you were going to have a long wait for your mental health team coming on board, but you did a lot. You I remember you buying like self-help books, and you bought us a book to read so we could understand what you were going through. I don't know whether if you got the book there.
Yeah.
So what was the book? I can't remember what the book was called. Bipolar Disorders, the Survival Guide. And that, as like sort of
Advocate.
Yeah. So for me, that was kind of, you're not only just thinking about yourself, but you're also thinking about us as your parents, to help us understand what's going on in your mind and what's going on in your body, so that we kind of have a better understanding of maybe how we can help you and how we can support you as a family.
Yeah. But I kind of think that like you needed to, like, I drew the shit straw in getting the diagnosis, but you've got the child with the diagnosis.
Yeah.
So ultimately you need to know.
Well, I think it's important to know, though.
Yeah.
It's important to have an understanding. Yes, I've been depressed. I've had a breakdown, so I kind of can understand the depressive side and how that makes you feel, but I have no understanding of what it feels like to be manic, or the combination of the both.
I mean, being manic is great. I'm not gonna lie. It is, because you're so, like, I remember one time, I think I started cleaning my house at about 11 o'clock in the morning, and the next time I looked at the clock, it was 10 o'clock at night. And I scrubbed everything with a toothbrush.
No, yeah, well,
Haven't done it since.
yeah.
But, you know, like, I just get bursts of energy and I'm really productive. And, you know, it can be dangerous, but more so because it can slip into psychosis, but then that tends to be around like mania and higher levels of, well, like bipolar type 1.
So what's the difference between the two then?
Like hypomania is just like lower. So I get like hyperactive and I've got a lot of energy, but like mania can slip into psychosis. You know, people might think that they are genuinely a superhero and they can genuinely save the world. Quite often people who experience mania will get will spend periods of time in mental health hospitals to get the treatment that they want, and they can be quite prolonged periods of mania, whereas hypomania is like 4 or 5 days.
Right.
Sometimes longer. Like I'm not dulling it down. Like everybody's different, aren't they? But hypomania is not as extreme as mania is.
Okay. So what kind of things do you do on a daily basis? I know like sort of it's a constant thing, but what kind of like sort of tricks or things that you can share with us that help you, like relaxation exercises or anything like that? Do you do what do you do to help your mental health on a day-to-day basis?
So the main thing that I do is I use an app called Breathe, which has like meditations on it, hypnotherapies on it. Some of them are like half an hour long, some of them are like 2-3 minutes long. But they've got like a wide range of things on there. So like if it's stress, if I'm stressed in the day, I can just put my headphones in and do a 5-minute deep breathing exercise thing on this app, and then that kind of brings me back down.
Yeah.
So I use that quite a lot, really, is like my main thing that I use. But also I found like eating is massive. Like if I eat processed foods or takeaways and I'm not eating healthily and I'm not getting like 5 a day, or even just having a bit of fruit a day, or like, you know, anything like that, if I'm not eating well, it impacts my mood massively.
Right.
And I think just like the occasional bit of exercise, like I'm not huge on exercise, but obviously like keeping busy helps to keep you balanced and whatever. Like I'll go for a walk or whatever where I can. But they're like my main things, really. If I
Yeah.
don't do a bit of exercise, if I don't eat well, and if I don't use my app when I'm getting stressed, then I think I can get triggered quite easily.
Yeah.
So I don't use massive coping strategies because I get overwhelmed otherwise if I do too much.
Right. Okay. So
Which
kind
then tip it. If I'm like, oh, I've got to do this to keep me like this, or I need to do that, or I need to do this, and I stress myself out, and then that makes it worse.
right. Okay.
So just 2 or 3 little things that I can do is enough. But everybody's different. Somebody might need 6 or 7 different things to do throughout the day.
Yeah.
And healthy eating using an app and doing a bit of exercise may not be within that. Everybody's different. Everybody finds their own ways to cope.
Yeah. So like sort of how would you say you now at this moment, do you feel quite stable?
Yeah, probably the most stable I've been. Well, I say the most stable I've been, probably on par for the most stable I've been. Like, you know, when in January, my anxiety was quite bad when we went down into the 3rd lockdown.
Yeah.
That really impacted. But again, I've just learned to manage and learned to deal and adapted to all of the changes again, like everybody else has had to as well.
But you've been quite lucky you've been able to still continue to work.
Yeah, I think if I hadn't have been able to continue to work, then it would have been a lot worse, because there's no way I would have been able to keep myself preoccupied and that busy every day to keep my mental health well at all.
Yeah. So if there's anybody that has any questions for Samara, please type ahead, because we got a few more minutes left. So we've got Facebook users put up, proud of you, Mara, love you.
That Ashley, I think that's Ashley.
I don't know, it doesn't say, it just says Facebook user. So
Ashley calls me Mara and uses the pink hearts with the stars.
all right, there you go. Yeah. So on the whole, what advice could you give somebody that may be suffering with a bit of depression, who might not have got a diagnosis, how they could, or ways they could help themselves, especially with everything going on, because that's really kind of giving everybody's mental health a bit of a battering, isn't it?
I think it's just really important to talk about it. Yeah. So talk about how you're feeling. It's okay to feel like shit. It's okay to feel down. It's okay to feel low. And it's okay to talk about it. Like, I can't get my head around that we're 2021 and there is still so much stigma around mental health and not being able to talk about it and not being honest about it. Like, just talk about it, because you could save somebody's life by talking about it, and you could save your own life by talking about it. I think, like, for me, I convinced myself that nobody wanted me around because I was fucking miserable, and actually that wasn't factual. And I think, you know, I had a lot of guilt about that after it happened, because I realized that actually that wasn't right, and what I would have ripped away from everybody else would have been something that could never come back. So I think it's just really, really important to just talk about it. It's really difficult to talk about, and not everybody understands. But I think the more people start talking about it, it's natural to feel anxious, because anxiety is a worry, anxiety is a fear, it's fight or flight. It's been around for decades, it's been around for centuries. Like, that is just a natural human response to something that we're uncertain about. And I just think there's too much stigma around somebody saying, I'm feeling really anxious about going back to work, because, like, people have been anxious about the fact that we've been in lockdown and they can't go out, but there's going to be a lot of anxiety around people being able to go out, because we haven't been able to do it for so long. And
I've kind of noticed that within myself. And I don't know.
I cannot wait to go to a pub, but have so much anxiety around going out.
Well, I don't know whether I'm picking up off of Oliver's anxieties, because he doesn't want to go out at the best of times.
Yeah.
And trying to just to get him to go out for a little walk, I'm finding that I'm having to force myself to take the dog out, because I wouldn't say I'm over anxious about it. It's just there is something in me that thinking, oh, shall I? Oh no, I can't be bothered today. That kind of thing going on. So Anne's just wrote, she said, I've just downloaded the app as I've had mental health problems, but unlike you, I got treatment quickly. I do tell people about it because I won't be ashamed of it. Well done, Anne. Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? It's part of who we are. There is nothing to be ashamed that you're struggling.
No, not at all. It's absolutely fine. Like, it's normal. Talk about it. It's okay.
Yeah. And if you are struggling, reach out. I mean, my messenger is always open, and it's like sort of that's what kind of what I started the group for in the beginning, was to help people with that are dealing with stress and anxiety. So I am a stress and anxiety management coach. So if anybody out there listening that needs some help with strategies, that relaxation methods, please contact me. And I'm sure, Samara, you've got your own page as well, haven't you?
Yeah, Mental Health and Me.
Mental Health and Me. So you like sort of, obviously you've got quite a lot of followers on there as well, I noticed. And is it like sort of just like sort of your own page where you're kind of telling people how you are that day, or what kind?
Yeah, so just like post little bits, little things that might be positive, that might uplift people, little quotes, things like that.
Yeah. So maybe like sort of on the end of this, if you can like sort of because we can't like sort of post comments on here, unfortunately, maybe you could leave your link to, excuse me, to your group page in the
Yeah.
Did you not also start a blog at one point?
Oh yeah, that was like a year ago.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Wrote about 4 blogs, that was it, gave up.
Yeah, but then again, like sort of that's another thing that's helping you is writing about it, isn't it?
Yeah, and then lockdown hit and I had nothing to talk about anymore because I wasn't going out anywhere and doing anything. Watching documentaries on Netflix.
That's, if you can't talk to somebody about it, it's another good way of releasing it, isn't it?
Journaling, blogging, yeah.
Yeah.
Just chat shit and people will read it.
Yeah, but even if you're just grabbing a pen and a paper, if you're at home, it's a good way of releasing stuff that when you're feeling stressed and you've got things going on in your mind. Sometimes it just helps to make things seem a little bit more clearer in your own mind and in your own thoughts. So thank you really for joining us this evening, Samara, and being so open about your diagnosis and journey. Is there anything that you would like to say before we go? Any tidbits or advice that you would like to give people?
No, not really. Just ask for help if you feel that you need help. Speak to your GP. Speak to the Samaritans.
Yeah.
Just seek help. If you need help and you feel that you need to ask for help, then ask for help.
Yeah.
That's it, really. Just ask for help.
And Anne says, thank you, Samara. Thank you, Anne, for watching. So we've come to the end of our hour. Again, thank you so much for sharing, because not everybody feels comfortable sharing their journey. But I think for somebody that's suffering, for another bipolar person that may be listening, it will like sort of maybe give them some encouragement. And as you said, it is really important to talk about these things and not be ashamed of any mental health issue.
No.
Because it's part of who we are at that moment in time, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, love you.
No, you too.
And I'll say good night to everybody listening. Thanks for joining us.